Hi there, this is Shanil. Last week we discussed how you can get started with a managed fund and what you need to know before you take the leap. In that process, picking up the right asset class that fits your needs is one of the crucial steps. So I want to help you with that step in this episode.
Welcome to Cashflow Formula, insights into the world of investing, and learn how to build wealth through cashflow, simplifying the complicated world of alternative investments for you. If you like what you are hearing and want to learn more, consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to it. Here's your host, Shanil Werasinke, founder of SNW Investments.
Yeah, so it is a journey. So I started off I spent about 13 years really focused on being an actor. So I was living in New York City. I was focused on being an actor. I went to graduate school for acting. And after about 13 years, I found myself at the age of 31. I was about $95,000 in debt from student loans and from credit cards. I was newly married. And I was making probably $30,000, $35,000 a year.
That's Brian Hemedinger, a real estate investor and the founder of Maebar Capital. Let's find out how he managed to get out of that financial troubles.
So that wasn't getting me very far. And that's the point where I knew I needed to make some kind of transition into some different type of business. So I ended up working for an upscale fitness brand, as you mentioned, and I transitioned to a successful sales career with them. I applied all that energy and passion and work ethic, all the things that I put into acting. I was able to apply it into sales and be very successful at that, and then grew my career with that company, taking on multiple leadership roles over the years. All that kept me very busy. And I reached a point where I suddenly realized after about 10 years or so of doing that, so this is about 5 years ago, I kind of took a step back, looked at the big picture, and realized I've been working really hard. I've been investing in the 401k. We've been putting money aside into an investment portfolio, the stocks, bonds portfolio. And I looked at it and I said, if this isn't really going to get us to where we want to be, I mean, we're basically hoping that this is going to be a strategy that's going to give us enough money to retire at some point and live the lifestyle we live now. And I realized I needed to do something different. I needed to do something in addition to what I'm doing now. And so through the help of mentors, I started to dive into multifamily. I went through a typical journey of getting interested, reading the books, listening to the podcast, and then finally got some mentorship, some coaching, and really started to focus on multifamily. So that's how I got into it.
Well, having experience in sales must have certainly helped Brian to make the transition from acting. In the real estate investing world, particularly in US real estate, he chose to invest in multifamily real estate. Not only that, he walks us through how he sees the world of real estate investing.
And you've been in the multifamily world, you know how dedicated everybody is within this world, how dedicated they are to their craft. This is something that we love, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. Acting is the same thing. People are super passionate. They're super dedicated to their craft. So being able to apply that level of passion and focus to sales was a relatively easy transition. And then being able to follow a process was a relatively easy transition, because in sales, oftentimes you work for a company, they'll teach you a sales process. You just need to execute it. It's not that different than playing a role in a play and executing on the script. And then you needed to be able to build that connection with people, which again, having worked as an actor, you work on that all the time with your scene partners, because you want things to be, you want a real connection. You want it to really feel and appear to be real. So there was a lot of skills that translated really well over to sales.
Most of us, when faced with new challenges or need to move the needle in our life towards greater success, much needed courage seems to be missing out. Lack of courage and indecision in our life can lead to many downfalls. So here's Brian again breaking this down for you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I feel like people generally fall into one of two categories. There are some people that are really biased towards education and research and gathering information and wanting to know everything that's going to happen before they actually take action. And then there's other people that get an idea and they act on it right away. They make decisions very quickly. And it's that sort of ready, fire, aim approach. And I fall into the category of the former, where I am somebody that gets educated, does the research, but maybe doesn't take action so quickly. And that's kind of where I was at with multifamily. I was really studying it for about 3 years before I really took any kind of significant action. And what when I would say move the needle for me and somebody that is kind of like me is one is starting to take some action, assessing what is the first thing I could do. So for example, for myself, I remember one of the first things I did was when I first started to get into real estate in general was I was studying wholesaling, which I didn't do any wholesaling, but there was a couple things that I could do to start taking action in that area. And I would say to myself, well, what's really the consequence of taking this step? I can take this step and I would take it. And that would get me a little bit closer. And if we translate that to multifamily, when I started to get into multifamily, one of the first steps was, okay, well, let me choose a market. Let me start now calling brokers, start making those broker calls. And the more that you do, the more you start to feel like you're in the game and the more confidence you build. So that's one step, I think, is one, when you get interested in something, really assess, am I interested in this or am I really invested in this? Because you want to make sure you're invested before you really start taking significant action. You want to make sure that this is something that you're going to sustain a passion for. And then two is ask yourself, okay, so what are some of the actions I can take? And what are the consequences of those actions, which are probably not going to be very severe? So you start taking those low risk actions, which will ultimately move you to what you might consider today a high risk action. But along the way, your risk tolerance increases. Yeah. And then three, which I think is the most powerful thing, is joining some type of community, whether that's mentorship, whether that's coaching, but some type of community to get around people that are doing it, to get around people that are like-minded, that are helping to hold you accountable, that are there as a support. So when you get to that place where you maybe don't know what the next step is, you've got somebody that you can turn to. I think hands down, that's the most powerful thing for anyone who's getting into this business.
If you've been listening to the show from the beginning, you already are aware of these soft skills in order to get ahead of the crowd. If you're looking for great passive investing opportunities, yet you keep running into dead ends or shady syndicates, that's a clear sign that you're not doing your homework. One way to overcome this is to network with other passive investors in your area and getting referrals from them if they have made such investments. Here's Brian again with an interesting tip for you if you are worried about damaging your name as an investor in the industry.
I've talked to people that peers and mentors, and they say, listen, if you're really nervous about making the broker calls, start calling brokers in a market that you're not even interested in. Just start calling those brokers. That way, if the call doesn't go so well, no harm done. So you're calling a broker in wherever. Yeah, so I would say I'm in the process of that because I still work full time and I work for a company that I've worked for 15 and a half years. I love the company and I actually love what I do as well. But I just know that it's not going to ultimately, this on its own is not going to ultimately get to me to where I want to go. However, when you closely identify with what you do, which is something that we naturally do, it can be difficult to make that transition because people know you as that. You've branded yourself in many ways as that thing. So now coming out and saying, hey, I'm a real estate investor can feel kind of inauthentic because it's like, no, you're the fitness club guy, you're not a real estate investor. So first off, I think is doing the work internally, building the belief for yourself And there's, I think, many ways you can do that. I'm a big proponent of meditation, for example, and using meditation and journaling and affirmations to start to build the belief of what you can do and what the future can look like. As I mentioned, getting around other people. So as you start to hang around other investors, you feel more like an investor. As you start to do the things that investors do, when we talked about calling brokers, when we talk about visiting a market, you start to do those things, you start to feel that you are an investor. So you're building that identity internally. And in addition to that, I think you got to think about, we so closely associate with what we do sometimes, but ask yourself, not what is it that I do, but who am I? Meaning, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a leader, I'm a coach, I'm an investor. I can be all those things. It doesn't have to be just this. It can be this and that. And recognizing that your identity is really who you are in totality, not this one thing that you do. How we think people will perceive us as we start to identify as this other thing, as we identify as an investor, how we think people will perceive that is different from how they actually do. Because as I started to actually put things out there that identified me as a real estate investor, when I put that on LinkedIn, right? I remember that was a moment for me when I actually put on LinkedIn that I'm a multifamily investor and started posting things. People were reaching out to me out of curiosity. They weren't questioning my credibility because I'm much farther along than they were. They wanted to be more educated. They wanted to understand more. And now I'm in a position to help guide them because of all the education that I've done and the experience that I've had. So I think sometimes we get in our head about what other people are going to think, and it might feel inauthentic to us. But then when we actually put it out there, people receive it very openly and they want to learn more.
Sticking to your story and being consistent with your identity is the secret here. However, it may sound easier than said. You just have to persevere long enough to get your message out. You do that long enough, you may see a significant improvement as an investor.
And sometimes you may not get the results that you want as quickly as you may want them. However, when you focus on this as a journey, when you focus on this as a process. So for me, for example, a big part of why I'm doing this is not just for the financial reasons, but it is for the personal and professional growth that I experience in going through this type of experience of building something new and building a new skill. And I take a lot of satisfaction from the process, from the growth. But there are times where I may hit what feels like a little bit of a wall. And it sort of feels like, am I really going to be able to do this at the level that I want to do this? And that you get in your head and questioning a little bit. But if you can take the step back and you can say, you know what, that feeling that I'm feeling right now, that's part of this. That's part of this process. That's part of being an entrepreneur. And every entrepreneur experiences that. And what do good entrepreneurs do is they move past it and they continue to expand their tolerance for that discomfort. So that, I think, is the major pitfall, is when you've got an identity that you're closely associated with, it's easy to go back to that. It's easy to rely on that. But as you're building that new identity, continuing to move forward, you might sometimes feel that pull to go back because it feels safe. But just to continue to move forward and recognize that, hey, it's not all about the result. It's not all about achieving the thing by a certain date. It's really about the growth that you experience in this whole process. And as you're expanding your identity, you're expanding who you are and what you're capable of, and the impact that you can have on other people as well.
Money just happened to be one of the byproducts that investors enjoy. For me, it's all about freedom that can create in the future. With that being said, I want to let you in on a very powerful concept, regardless of who you want to be. This concept alone will take your productivity to the next level without making significant changes to your lifestyle. This concept is known as unique ability. Let's hear more about this concept from Brian.
Well, yeah, unique ability, that term actually comes from a gentleman named Dan Sullivan, who runs a company called Strategic Coach. And the way that I look at this is when you think about multifamily, but probably this applies to most businesses, it's a team business. I mean, multifamily is definitely a team business. You rarely see people that are doing this thing on their own. They've got other people around them that are all supporting the same goal. Now, as I started to learn multifamily and started to go through the process, focusing on acquisition, focusing on operations, and starting to learn the business, I realized, hey, there's different roles in this business. There are some people that are focused very much on asset management. They love that. They love asset management. They love the spreadsheets. They love figuring out the renovation costs, how we're going to do it, all those things. There are some people that love the acquisition process. They love to do the research on the market. They love building the broker relationships. And there's other people that might love underwriting, for example, and just have a passion for that and be great at it. And going through that process, when you think about what is unique ability, and I'll come back to how this applies, the Dan Sullivan's kind of unique ability definition is really 4 characteristics. One is a superior skill. Where is it that you have a natural superior skill, that thing that you know you do well and that people tell you you do well and that people actually come to you for, where they come to you for advice, etc. Second is passion. What is the thing that you just love to do that whether you're getting paid or not, you just do it because you love it? Third is energy. What are the things that actually give you energy so that when you're engaged in those activities, you're actually more energized rather than drained? And then the fourth thing is never-ending improvement, meaning what's the thing that you have so much passion for and so much energy for and you love doing that even though you're already good at it, you continue to find ways to get better. So those are the 4 characteristics as it relates to unique ability. Now, it's not necessarily one thing, but it's kind of finding, it's like taking all the things that you do and putting them through that filter. How closely does this fit in with my unique ability? And then when you look at multifamily as an example, and you look at those different roles, now you can apply that filter and say, what role gives me the opportunity to be in that unique ability the majority of the time? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be that way, but when you can use that as a filter and then say, hey, where can I spend the majority of the time in my unique ability, those things that I love to do, those things that I'm drawn towards, that is likely going to be the role for me.
There are 2 book recommendations that I want to make to you. The first book is Who Not How. That's where the unique ability is explained. The next book is Good to Great by Jim Collins. These 2 will single-handedly help you understand the same concept from different perspectives. The faster you realize your unique ability and get the right people on the right seats, as Jim explains in his book, you may be able to achieve your dreams sooner than you think.
So the part of the business that I'm really focused on is capital raising, because within the multifamily business, you have operators who are very, very strong operators who have a proven track record. And oftentimes they're looking to scale, and yet their investor base isn't necessarily large enough for them to raise the capital that they need to continue to scale. So they'll go to other people to help to partner and raise that capital. So that's what I'm really focused on is capital raising to ultimately attract people who have some interest in passive investing in real estate, to help educate them so they become more educated and understand more about what they would want to invest in and how that really fits in with their current goals. And then provide them those opportunities with operators that I've already vetted in deals that I've vetted as well, and just be able to match them with those deals so they can passively invest in real estate.
Let me quickly explain why this concept of fund of funds is powerful. Here's how this applies to you as a passive investor who is looking for great investment opportunities. In Australia, there are managed investment schemes that are open to wholesale investors. What you need to do as an investor is to find great operators with a solid track record to invest alongside with them. In a fund of funds scenario, what exactly happens is that very investment scheme that you just invested with the fund manager invests in another managed investment scheme who was looking for capital with a great investment opportunity. There are so many scenarios here why this fund of funds structure makes sense. However, there is a whole episode dedicated for this concept coming up in this season, so I'll leave this topic at this point as Brian's got golden nuggets for us.
It is. Yeah. And it goes back to what you were saying about getting the right people in the right seats. It goes back to that unique ability. You have the passive investors who want the benefits of investing in real estate. They want the cash flow, the appreciation, the tax benefits, but they may not have a passion for doing the due diligence. They may want to simply work with somebody who they can get to know and trust and be educated enough that they know what they feel comfortable investing in, but they get to leverage that person. And then for somebody like me, I, as a capital raiser, get to leverage the unique ability of these operators who are so great at what they do and are so passionate about what they do. And that gives them the ability to focus on that and leverage my ability to focus on this other part of the business. So that's really what it's about, is everybody playing a role to accomplish a common goal.
Capital raisers play a big role in the fund of funds space and in the real estate industry as well. That's another story for another day. So if you want to get in touch with Brian, here's how you can do that.
Okay, so yeah, a few things. Maebar Capital is the name of the company. So it's Maebar. So maebarcapital.com, which is in the process actually of being built now. So probably not sure when this will air, but hopefully it's up by that time. You can email me at brian@maebarcapital.com. Instagram is @bhemedinger, which is B like Brian. And then Hemedinger is Hemedinger, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Brian Hemedinger, and I'm right there.
This episode has been all about discovering your unique ability and ways to source a deal for a managed fund. In the next episode, I hope to walk you through how you should run the numbers conservatively in a deal to make sure that deal makes sense to you. If you have any questions that you would like to get answered at the end of this episode, shoot them to info@cashflowformula.com.au.
Thanks for listening to the show. Remember to join us again next week for another episode. Learn more about what we discussed here by visiting our website, cashflowformula.com.au. Until next time.